Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast. This is episode 79, Wonders of Life, Part 3, Body Wars and the Making of Me. I'm your host, Todd McCarty, and sitting in with me, as always, for this episode, coming in from Ohio, Mr. JT Kuzier. How are you doing this evening, JT?
I'm good. How are you, Todd?
I can't complain. It's been very busy at work. I'm very tired today, but we're going to get through this. This is going to be another good one.
Another episode of World Wonders of Life.
That's right.
World Emotion, but yeah, right. A couple doors down.
And coming in from Tampa, Florida, St. Pete, the left coast, shall we call it, Mr. Hal Bowers.
All right. Aloha, Ho'ele.
How are you, sir?
Good. I'm ready to go dive into the human body again.
Ooh, Body Wars. It's an odd title. We'll get to that later. Oh, and Brian is coming to us from the city of brotherly love. Tonight, I actually watched a little travelogue about a train trip with a British gentleman, Michael Portillo, if anybody know him. And he went to Philadelphia, and I learned a couple things about William Penn and Philadelphia in general, and one of the cheesesteak places. I think he went to Pat's. So, Brian, welcome to the show as always.
Greetings, salutations, and I'm always happy to give tours of Philadelphia when our friends are in town. So
excellent.
You should come and see us sometime, Todd. We've only been talking about it for 9 years now.
I know.
So.
It's about time.
Todd's father lives like 15 minutes from me, by the way. So I keep telling him, come visit your dad.
Come on over. I know. We got to get that done. So, and tonight we have a very special guest coming in from Grand Rapids, Michigan, Dr. Bill Ahrens, and he is in a secluded location somewhere in a hospital in an unknown location, but hermetically sealed. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you here. So, Bill, as you know, you're a listener. As you know, we always do our listener mail first, so feel free to jump in anytime. It's generally a free for all, and JT likes to play kind of stump the chumps here with this. Sometimes he doesn't give us a heads up when we're kind of on our heels trying to figure out. Yeah, his eyes are bugging out. So, JT, what do you got for this month?
All right, mailbag is full. I'm expecting Christmas cards soon, so people can start sending those. But first one, so we're in a few various Facebook groups. Like we worked at Disney in the 70s, collecting Disney stuff. And there's been a few posts by a gentleman named Bill Jennings. He's an older gentleman, and we've had some interactions with him on there. He posts lots of artifacts and things he collected when his time at Disney. And his son actually reached out to us, Franklin. And he, this is back in February, actually. He said Bill's his dad. He's 76 and retired from Disney about 10 years ago. So that'd be about 2012. Bill now works as a school crossing guard, and he has no idea how to listen to a podcast. So maybe we can get him set up there, Franklin. But he did reach out to us because Franklin and Bill both attended Retro Magic in 2019.
Oh, nice.
And Franklin also sent me a little correspondence he had with his dad. And he was kind of talking about different things, like as far as the building where they assembled the rooms for the Contemporary. You say DC6. He was one of the painters who worked Saturday on overtime to paint the letters DC6 on the building. And he also said, if you look in some of these photos, you can see what they refer to as the funny old truck, which I'll post a picture of this. This is the one that would have drove around Fort Wilderness. It had like almost looked like a produce racks on the back of it, kind of held stuff, and they drove around and sold you things on the loops. He said he helped build the body on that trunk, and he even painted the oak with a spar varnish He remembers it coming back to the shop for repair, and he repainted the oak. So we'll show you what picture Bill's talking about, what truck. It's pretty cool, though. So thanks for sharing, Franklin. And maybe we can get your dad on a future episode, or both of you guys even. You can sit there for tech support, and we'll get some stories out of Dad there.
We might have to press some vinyl or get him some cassette tapes. The box set of the podcast here. If you get some a little iPod with all of our episodes on it for him.
Yeah,
we had some nice chats with him at Retro Magic back in when did we have that? April, right? We had it in April.
Was he at April too?
He was at April. Bill and Franklin were there in April, and we chatted a couple of times that day about some of the artifacts we had on display and his connection to them and things he worked on there. It was really something.
Very much so. Okay, next up, this is from John. John said, "Happy Epcot 40th, gentlemen, and how? I'm glad to hear you and your family weathered the storm okay." This is back October 1st. He was reading an article about the opening of Epcot from 1982, and he stumbled across a tidbit in a Washington Post article about a Smellitzer, a machine that shoots barnyard odors across your nose as you sail past a 1940s farmhouse in the Land Pavilion. He's never heard of a Smellitzer being used in Listen to the Land, and my first memories of that ride are from the mid-90s, so he's not sure if that's real or not, and were they really pumping out barnyard odors in that ride? Anybody? Brian, you wrote back.
And I believe, if I don't remember what I wrote back, but I'm guessing it was something along the lines of, I doubt the people in the rotating restaurant would have enjoyed the barnyard odors along with their breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So I am dubious about this suggestion.
Well, I did some research and came across some articles in newspapers that actually said it was that they were going to have smells in the land. So I don't know what and it was mentioning the barn. So I don't know. I've never heard of it before. How?
Well, I mean, there were certainly, trying to remember, that was a long time ago for me. I mean, the jungle part certainly smelled like jungle, and there were smells throughout throughout many of the rides in Future World. So it's not entirely out of the question, but I will speculate this. Maybe it did open with the smells, and perhaps, as Brian said, well, I mean, what was barnyard like? Would they really? I don't believe they would have shot the smell of chicken poop out.
Right. So obviously in the jungle scene, the rainforest scene, that's a naturally occurring musty smell.
Yeah, you got the plants and the wet and all that. Yeah.
If you recall, in the desert scene, they used to have that heat fan that would run.
Right.
That was legitimate heat you were feeling, which would lend a smell, whether there was an intention or not. The barnyard scene as you're sailing right by the restaurant, I'm just not sure. It could have been grass or something like that, which would have been a natural smell. But yes, I don't think it would have been cattle emissions or anything like that.
Well, as we learned on our Spaceship Earth tour, there's a good chance if it was there, the Smellitzer could still have a big hole in there or something, where it was.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to go digging around in that barn,
somebody just hop out of your boat. They don't have the attendants anymore, and dig around that scene. Pet the dog.
That is for a big hole in the wall that where this thing would have been, right?
Yeah, that is one of the few attractions that there hasn't been a lot of documentation that's leaked out so far. Most of the other ones, I think, have been pretty well. I think Imagination and the Land are probably the two that we haven't seen a lot of extensive documentation hit the internet for study. So someday we will probably get a diagram and see exactly where the Smellitzer was, if it was there, and maybe what scent it had. So I'm looking forward to that, the future.
Thank you, John, for that question and note. Next up is Scott Jensen. This one is hot off the press today. Scott just emailed us because in our last episode, or one of the recent ones, we brought up guests and listeners that have appeared in pictorial souvenirs and videos and things. And
yes,
Scott was in a video. He was on a must-do Stacy 7 Things to Do video.
Okay.
And we'll share the link here. So Scott, he said this story, his daughters are sitting in the separate rooms of the Pop Century, on family vacation. I assume 2 rooms next to each other, that type of thing. And they texted him and said, "We just saw you on TV riding in the Haunted Mansion." He had no idea what they were talking about, as the filming was done years ago. So he waited, he had to get through all 7 things, and then the Disney Visa ad, then the Vacation Club with the mom with the casserole, the whole thing. And then he finally got around to it. And there he was riding by in a doom buggy in the Haunted Mansion. And he said it's amazing and the coolest thing because they never told him what they were going to do with the footage. So I assume, he knew they were filming, because it was really bright too. If you watch this, it's like very well lit, the scene where he rolls by. But I think that's great. And that's probably, I don't think that's aired anymore. Stacy's now gone, isn't she?
Stacy has retired from that role.
Okay, so this is now in history, and we'll post the link if you have a better copy of this. This is a rough copy of somebody's like Nokia phone when camera phones first came out, filming the TV screen. It's not that great. Definitely share it with us. But thank you, Scott. As Hal said last episode, we're still looking for more people that were featured on things. I think it's hilarious, this connection. We've got, this is now the 3rd person that listens to the show that's been in a promo Disney World. So
You think they were pointing at the hippo in this one?
it was so fast. This was a very late 90s, like cut. Like, it was not it was very extreme angle type thing. It looks like
it's also the second instance where a kid caught it and had to tell the adult, "Hey, you're in this."
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Beat it, punk. That's
That's sure, kid.
Well, now if this happens, I mean, the amount of things you're trying to plan as a parent is like, good luck even having the time to do it. I'm getting Genie Plus. Leave me alone. I can't even take a minute to watch the TV. All right, last one here. And this is, I'm going to see if we can stump you guys, or we can get a listener out there. This is from Jim Collins. Jim Collins is very curious if we have any information of a potential time capsule at the Boardwalk Resort. He is asking former opening crew members. I'd never heard of this one, and I'm not really sure if it exists, if it's somewhere on property. I mean, the property's bigger than you think, and it could be somewhere else, like in a garden somewhere. But who even knows? I don't know.
I remember talking about one in the yacht club, but just not the beach club. Sorry, not Boardwalk.
There's one at the yacht club?
That's what I remember and thought we were talking about. I swear it was.
Now, I just heard a story, and this is unrelated, but it is. The Nickelodeon Studios time capsule at Universal Studios. Well, when they closed Nickelodeon Studios, they moved it over to the Nickelodeon Hotel. And the latest I heard was when they closed the Nickelodeon Hotel, nobody thought to dig up the time capsule, and nobody knows where it is now. It's just gone forever. So, yeah, that's the legend I heard. But I don't know.
It's probably just full of slime anyway.
That it did look like it. Yeah, it had that like glowing goo look, like Ghostbusters 2, but green instead of pink. All right. Well, if we hear anything about the Boardwalk time capsule, what would be in it? When did Boardwalk open?
96, 94, 95. I think it was 96. I think we covered that in our in the article, in the episode where we talked about Crescent Lake, and it's the late, that it was the last thing there as they opened Yacht Beach and the Swan Dolphin. And then for years, you would go by the billboard, the painted billboard in the tram that said the Boardwalk coming soon. I think it opened in 95, if my memory serves correct from that episode. But
I wonder if they put 95 artifacts in there, like boardwalky things from the construction. I don't even know what they would do.
Okay, so oddly enough, I just ran across some documentation of this.
Whoa.
Okay. So the resort opened on July 1st, 1996, and it says, this page says, the crystal globe at the bottom of the hippocampus Electrolier chandelier is a time capsule scheduled for opening during the 50th anniversary celebration. So I guess the ball on the bottom of the big chandelier at the resort that has carousel animals on it.
Yeah,
It's like this 3,000-pound chandelier. Apparently,
he
the
did.
ball at the bottom is the time capsule, and they were supposed to open it this year.
Oh,
Well-
he mentioned the chandelier. Okay, I see what his
Okay.
email means now. It referred to the crystal chandelier hanging when we opened the resort that was split open and they created a time capsule. I see. Okay.
So
it's
did
just
they? Because they
hanging?
did the contemporaries, right?
Well, they only did the contemporaries after like a bunch of people said, "Hey, there's a time capsule
Yeah,
in
yeah.
contemporary." They're about to ruin that resort, aka renovate it. So, I'm
Wait,
you know,
which one? The
the
boardwalk?
boardwalk. Yeah, they're about to. They already did the Bellevue Lounge and a couple of other things, but there are plans to, completely redo the lobby and everything else, and probably make it look like a Hilton. But it might be, maybe this podcast will bring it to the
Right.
boardwalk's attention that
Oh, and here's another update. Okay, so on Jim Korkis, Disney historian, he's got an article about the boardwalk, and he says that the time capsule was supposed to be filled with sand and artifacts, or it was filmed. It was filled with sand and a time capsule to be opened on the 50th anniversary, but the globe developed a leak or fell and cracked, depending on who tells the story. And the sand of the time capsule were removed and supposedly in safekeeping somewhere.
like sands through the hourglass, so is the time capsule of the boardwalk.
Why sand? Because
Because it's the beach, the boardwalk.
I feel like that wouldn't be good for the artifact. Maybe it would be good for the artifacts.
I was going to suggest that somebody just take a big stick and turn a pinata like loose in
Now there you go. That's a good idea.
Now we found out it's been removed and it's in a box somewhere. And
So we need two
safekeeping.
things. First off, somebody that's at the boardwalk or near there has to be listening to this episode in the next month or so. I want to see what is currently hanging on this chandelier, and then you need to go bug the guest or the cast member at the front desk and say, "Hey, where's the time capsule? We want to open this thing." That would be amazing. Boy, very interesting. These time capsules, they're popping up all over, it seems.
It's one of those things that sounds like a great idea until
it's you know what? It's an interesting idea. I mean, if you remember at the Contemporary, when they opened it, they had chronicled everything they put in it to begin with. So there were like videos of everything they had put in there to begin with.
So what's the big excitement when you open it?
And when they opened it, it was a bunch of maps and stuff that, like, there's a bajillion of them on eBay. Like, there wasn't 25 years is, I mean, I have things in drawers here that are 25 years old that
yeah.
So I mean, a time capsule is interesting when it's like 100 years and there's
Predictions of the future and books
or just artifacts of things that you're like, wow, what's this? And
where was the one they had? They put a car under there and they didn't know in the future if there was going to be gas and oil. So they put like an oil can in there and like a gallon of gas to run the car.
I do have a vague recollection.
And the whole car was rotted out and leaked.
That's great.
It's like somebody really put a lot of thought into this, and somebody really was like, "It's saying gonna leak." I know it, and then they open up some mess.
That's funny. So I'm looking at a picture of the chandelier, and there's still a glass ball that is hanging off of it, and it is dead empty. So,
where's it at? Like right in the main lobby?
I can't tell from this photo, but I guess so.
I'll tell you, when you think you run out of stuff to do at Disney, now I need to get over to that boardwalk and see this ball before they.
There you go. See what you can find.
The car you're talking about, by the way, JT, is the Miss Belvedere. It was a 1957 Plymouth Belvedere sealed in an underground vault on the grounds of the Tulsa City Courthouse as a 50-year time capsule. It was unearthed in 2007 during the state's centennial celebration and unveiled the next day.
Wasn't it a mess, right? I mean, it was.
It was advertised having built to withstand a nuclear attack. However, the vault was breached by long-term water intrusion that submerged the entire vehicle, causing significant cosmetic and structural damage Efforts were made to stabilize her condition, including suspension repairs, with the hopes of placing her in a museum. After years of being stored, it was accepted by the Historic Auto Attractions Museum in Roscoe, Illinois, and shipped in June 2017.
They basically just stored a car in like a flood simulation.
It was like Luke Skywalker in that the tank of water when he was
Batka tank or whatever they say.
Yes, that's.
They probably thought it was just so great, and then just year 5 it was just fully submerged.
There are videos of the raising of the buried Plymouth on YouTube. So,
gosh, now I want a list of all the time capsules on Disney property. Do you think we've hit them all?
Got to be close, but yeah, who knows? There could be some that we just have no idea about either.
Now I know what we need to do with the next Retro Magic. We need to do a time capsule.
Where are we going to bury it?
in our archive.
It's
at least we know it won't get waterlogged.
We've got a key to it. It's in a conditioned space. Great. You're all set.
Oh. All right. Well, that's going to close the mailbag. Thanks everybody who wrote us in this month. Jim will keep an eye on that time capsule for you. If we get any updates, we'll let you know. But if you'd like to send us a note, anything for us to talk about, podcast at retrowdw.com. We will try to get back to you on any message you send, and there is a chance your letter will end up on a future episode.
All right. Well, thank you very much, JT, for that, going through the mailbag. And it's hard to believe you mentioned holiday cards. Boy, they're going to be coming fast and furious. So,
oh yeah.
Well, it's on to this month's main topic, and it's amazing that we are in episode 3 of Wonders of Life. There is so much to unpack in this very large, small but very large pavilion. So those of you who have listened, episode 1 was all about the history behind the creation of the pavilion and the thought behind it. In the second episode for Wonders of Life, we walked through the pavilion, discussed the dome and the arch, as well as all the different little small exhibits you could do inside and feel and touch and sensory things. And tonight we're going to go on to a theater that was inside the pavilion called The Baking of Me with Martin Short. And then we're also going to go into the depths of Body Wars. And I got a lot to say about that because I was excited to go on it years and years ago. But how, just as you've been doing for the past couple episodes, I'm going to turn it over to you, our fearless Wonders of Life leader. So you are the commander again in chief of this episode. So take it away.
Yes, and I want to say one of the reasons besides why Dr. Bill's here, besides being a donor, is that being a medical doctor, he's going to talk us through some of the real medicine and the real science behind this attraction. And we had a pre-call and we had a ton of fun talking about the possibilities of what was kind of real and not real. So he's going to be jumping in and giving his thoughts and on tidbits and some of the terminology that was used and the reality of it.
I'm so excited. I didn't even connect the two till this very moment, till you said that. Why he's here and he's sitting at a hospital. And look at this. This is amazing.
You see all the syringes behind him, JT? He's going to show us exactly how it works.
He's got a really big one, too. Is he shrunk?
I do have to say, so I first experienced Wonders of Life and Body Wars as like a 15-year-old kid. And it's hard to look at it as an adult now and objectively, because as we'll find out, they definitely took some liberties with a lot of things in terms of scale, but it was still darn entertaining.
Oh, I can't wait to get in the scale. That's going to be great.
Have you been to the Sci-Fi Dine-In, Dr. Bill?
Yeah, I actually just ate there last month. My son and I were down there, and we had a front row seat.
This may not be real medical question or not. Is there any truth to that guy that keeps growing and they've got that big syringe and they're trying to, and he goes, I can't stop growing. And then
Well, it's about as accurate as Body Wars, I would say.
Okay.
All right, let's on with the show.
Moving on. Moving on.
They're only trying to help him, JT.
It's true. I love when they run up with that full speed,
Yeah.
2 full-grown men.
And then he picks it up and he throws it, and it just
like a lawn,
it just pierces
like a dart. Yeah,
the guy. Impales him. Oh goodness. Yeah. I think his issue was nuclear in nature. I think that's why he was exposed to radiation, and then
every clip there had something to do with radiation.
Yeah, that's true.
it was the 50s. That was a big thing. All right. So on the first episode in the series, on the Life and Health Pavilion, we discussed Rolly Crump assigning Imagineer Frank Armitage to concept to design an attraction that was the spiritual successor to Disneyland's adventure through inner space. And instead of an omnimover through the microscopic world of the atom, it would be a trip through the human body with full-scale sets replicating human organs, like the heart and lungs. So about a decade after the Life and Health Pavilion was abandoned and reborn as Wonders of Life, this concept of an attraction taking guests through the human body was revived. But this time, they decided they would use the same flight simulator technology that made Star Tours at Disneyland hit in 1987. And during the opening, Marty Sklar would explain that the technology needed to make full-scale moving sets depicting organs and lungs was impractical, and that the 70 millimeter film and motion base of the Advanced Technology Laser Application Simulator that they developed with Red Fusion Simulation in England finally made this kind of attraction practical to produce. Disney selected Leonard Nimoy to direct the live action portion of the film in the pre-shows. And we were talking about this a little while ago, and we think it was probably due to his box office successes directing Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home in 1986, and then 3 Men and a Baby for the Disney-owned Touchstone Pictures in 1987, which was actually the highest-grossing film for that year.
And rightfully so.
Yes. And in addition, Nimoy's experience with the Star Trek franchise was considered a valuable asset, as the attraction would be set in a futuristic organization with a very similar style to Star Trek's Starfleet as seen in the 1980s films. Like, even the costumes were kind of reminiscent, with like the red jackets looked a lot like the Star Trek films. So the idea of shrinking down people and sending them to the human body was pretty well known to the public in 1989. In 1987, the movie Inner Space, produced by Steven Spielberg and directed by Joe Dante, was an entertaining comedic farce in which a down-on-his-luck Navy pilot, played by Dennis Quaid, piloted a miniature submarine accidentally injected into the body of a neurotic grocery clerk, played by Martin Short.
Test pilot Tuck Pendleton wants to make history. Supermarket clerk Jack Putter needs a vacation.
Jack, you're late. That's not good. You know it's coupon day.
Lieutenant Pendleton is about to be miniaturized, placed into this needle, and then injected into this rabbit.
Rock and roll.
But something went wrong, and Tuck's about to get a new destination. Inside Jack Putter.
I'm in a man.
Hello, can you hear me?
I'm possessed!
Now, Jack's got twice the problems.
How you doing, Jack?
But he's double the man. With Tuck on his side.
Kicking more accounts!
In his gut. And on his case.
You're not gonna back groceries all your life, are you, Jack?
And only 24 hours left for Jack to get out of danger, so that Tuck can get out of Jack. Dennis Quaid, Martin Short. Give yourself a shot of adventure. Inner Space.
But that was a fantastic movie. I don't care what people say. It is underrated, and I loved it growing up. And I know, Brian, you've seen it. We talked about it.
We've talked about it on here. And Meg Ryan, Dennis Quaid, great film. Great film. A lot of fun.
Bill, does the doctor have any comments on the validity of that?
I haven't. I remember seeing it that summer, and the thing that sticks with me is how they tapped into the auditory nerve with some sort of device so that he could hear.
Right.
I just remember it being like a harpoon, and I remember that being disturbing to me. So,
well, it was disturbing to Martin Short too, as he writhes in pain when they did it.
Yeah, isn't it funny that Martin Short will now end up like in a film adjunct to another film about shrinking down? It's just this weird set of coincidences. And I found out doing research that that film did not make a lot of money. I think it cost him like 60 million to make it. It only took 40 million at the box office.
Oh,
But
wow.
it was the number one movie on VHS when it was released. So it ended up doing a great business on VHS, and it kind of saved it. But at the time, Joe Dante said he was really disappointed that the movie didn't do better at the box office, and he was afraid, oh, I'll never get to do another like big movie now because that like tanked me. But no, he did just fine. George Lucas's company, Industrial Light and Magic, which created the ride film for Star Wars, also won an Academy Award for their work in inner space. So it's not surprising that they were chosen to create the ride film portion of Body Wars. And we'll talk more about that kind of on the backside of our episode. So the true inspiration for Body Wars is the film Fantastic Voyage, which was released in 1966 by 20th Century Fox. That was actually, there's a big Disney connection with that film. It was actually directed by 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea's director Richard Fleischer, and with production designed by 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea's Nautilus designer and Disney legend Harper Goff. So there's a real big connection there. That film followed the adventures of a CIA agent named Charles Grant, who was portrayed by actor Stephen Boyd, who was in charge of protecting a Soviet scientist who's been injured in an assassination attempt and now suffers from a brain clot that can only be surgically cleared from inside his body. So Grant has to lead a surgical team from a secret organization, CMDF, the Combined Miniature Deterrent Forces, to remove the clot in less than 60 minutes, which is the length of time that the group can stay miniaturized before returning to normal size, after which they'll be attacked by the body's immune system or potentially kill the defecting scientist who holds the knowledge about how to stay miniaturized indefinitely. So basically what happens is they get shrunk down, they get sucked up into a syringe, they're injected into the patient's body, and then while traveling through the bloodstream, they're pulled into a tear in the artery and have to make their way through the heart, with the doctors on the outside putting the patient into cardiac arrest. So the submarine is destroyed by the pressure within the beating heart. So that's an interesting difference between Body Wars and that. The ship's communication system mysteriously malfunctions, but the scientists can track the submarine's nuclear engines remotely, so they kind of have an idea where it is. Now, it's interesting. There's like a series of things that kind of go wrong, which ends up being something somewhat like Body Wars. So they discover a leak in the ship, and then the crew has to make their way into the lungs to replenish the ship's oxygen supply. There is an accident, and the ship makes its way into the inner ear, where a crew member played by Raquel Welch is attacked by antibodies and must be rescued by the crew, who have to pull them off of her wetsuit with their bare hands when they get her back inside of the sub. And then finally, the crew reaches the brain with only 6 minutes remaining before they deminiaturize. So while the doctors use a laser to destroy the blood clot, the saboteur is revealed, played by Donald Pleasance, who you may know as Blofeld in the Sean Connery James Bond films. He tries to ram the sub into the now repaired clot to kill the scientist once and for all, but he's thwarted by Grant, who lasers the ship, which crashes harmlessly in a different part of the brain. Like, I guess that would be harmless. I don't know. And the remaining crew escapes through the patient's tear duct with only moments to spare. And the reason I mention this is because on Body Wars, we follow a nearly identical route through the body in a very similar sub, have to save a female scientist from being attacked by a white blood cell, and extract a needed resource from the body in order to survive and complete the mission. So if I'm not saying Body Wars was a ripoff of Fantastic Voyage, but I'm not saying it wasn't a ripoff of Fantastic Voyage. It was certainly inspired by it.
Particle Reduction Technician Harris. That's Particle Reduction Technician Harris. Please contact Bay number 1.
So let's kind of set the stage. Our story is set sometime around the year 2068. Matt, Miniaturized Exploration Technologies, has developed a series of probes that can be shrunk down to the size of a single blood cell to explore the body. Their latest model, the 26-ton LGS 250, can carry a pilot and up to 40 passengers to be beamed into a volunteer to observe the inner workings of their body.
Attention. All personnel planning to explore the tympanic membrane, please report to briefing room 117.
They had a little backlit display outside if you waited in the extended queue, which you probably did when the attraction first opened because the lines for this thing were humongous. And it had this little timeline of first they put in an unmanned one, and then they put in a larger unmanned one, and it went to this part of the body, and then they did one with two pilots, and then finally after it was perfected, they could do a version where tourists could go and experience this as well.
Attention! Miniaturization of probe Sierra 657 now commencing in Bay 3. We have miniaturization and successful entry into the occipital frontalis muscle.
So we get into line, and the first thing we do is go through 2 dermatopic purification screens.
Attention all observation team members. Before entering a body probe vehicle, you must pass through a level 1 and level 2 dermatopic purification screen. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask
how these look very much like a Star Tours line.
It's
very much.
There was a lot reused here, and I noticed as a kid when I was going up, I was just like, this looks like the grate and things behind us,
So I'm going to ask what dermatopic is, because I think that's a legitimate question.
I suppose they're just saying they're cleaning all the microbes off you, this surface of you.
Right, because we'd want to be clean before we get shrunk down to go inside, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there were 2 that you would walk through. The first was the level 1, and it would shine this blue light on you that would kind of travel up and down the sides of the walls and on an arch above your head, and it made kind of this neat sound. And then the level 2 scan was this pulsing red lights. So I guess those things cleaned you off before you could go in. So once our skin's clear, we go a little deeper into the queue and we get to watch some pre-show videos, which really helped to set up the story.
Hello, everyone. I'm your mission control officer. Around me, you see just a small part of the enormous team that is required to bring about a successful miniaturization. While every mission has its special challenges, this group is dedicated to making each voyage a safe and productive one.
We meet the mission commander, who is played by actor Deacon Matthews, who was a very busy television actor who eventually got to play Admiral Patterson on an episode of Star Trek Voyager. And he tells us that by the way of a highly sophisticated and ingenious process, not only will your ship be miniaturized, but it'll be beamed below the skin of a volunteer so that you're able to view the inner workings of the human body. He says that during this time, the ship will remain much smaller than the point of a pin and weigh less than a drop of water. Wow. And then when the mission is over, we'll be returned to the full size at the same exact coordinates that it was miniaturized. So I presumably they get rid of the whole we have to put you in a syringe and inject you by introducing some kind of beaming transporter along with the miniaturization process, which saves time.
Ladies and gentlemen, your probe Bravo 229er is being prepared. I'll be seeing you before you board with some specifics about your mission.
Just zipping you down there. Now, how was there any, I can't remember. We've talked about this before, how this, in amusement park rides, it's always, we need you as volunteers to get on this ship, right? We've talked about this. Like, why would you send 75 unaccredited people, not doctors like Dr. William, here, let's just send you into an unknown. And by the way, you're going to help us do something that nobody else can do.
Yeah. Well, there's always there's a series of tropes of why you're somewhere. It's like, it's either you're on tour. Yeah. So that's the Star Tours, Body Wars, Harry Potter. It's like, you're cleared as a tourist to be able to experience this. And then something goes and then something goes horribly wrong.
Yeah, everything has to go wrong. Although, Pandora Flight, it's not too wrong, right? There's nothing. It's just
no. Actually, that's one of the few things where they don't do something goes bad. That was kind of intended. But I think the idea was that we were we were on a very low level mission on this one.
You'll be assigned to a routine mission in the subskin region, a relatively safe area in the body. Don't worry, there will be plenty for you to see.
Yeah, it was a splinter.
Yeah. So this should have been a very boring, like a hey, need be. I mean, what the insurance ramifications of this? Absolutely. I cannot imagine what the insurance must have been like for the indemnity if like something went wrong and 40 people were killed. It was like, but it's a future you don't worry about.
I noticed these people, they look very Star Trek-y to me.
Very
like the maroon and the button-down outfit, the whole thing.
Yeah, it was extremely, the look and feel was certainly extremely influenced by Star Trek and Starfleet and the look of the films at that time. Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's, we talk a bit about audio and visual shorthands that are used to get audiences kind of familiar what's going on, since you very briefly get to see these things. And much like Mission Space was like, they sucked as much stuff as they could from the Mission to Mars movie to make it look spacey. They borrowed liberally from Star Trek in order to give you an idea that this is futuristic, like as much as they could.
And this is that era too when they started. I mean, you're wasting 10 minutes or so just watching gobbledygook to before you get on the ride.
It did. Well, it was a very long line, so it gave you something to do.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
it reminds me of Lieutenant Dan here. If you hear the words "go" for launch, you're gonna want to hang on.
Yep.
Cellular compression unit engaged.
3, 2, 1.
We get to see a live feed of another probe, Charlie 218, that shrunk down and penetrates the subcutaneous epidermal tier.
We've just received confirmation that probe and crew have penetrated the subcutaneous epidermal tier.
Sounds like a skin layer, huh, Doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. You got the epidermis, the dermis, and then the subcutaneous tissue. So
we are now under the skin.
Oh, all right.
Is this the guy they lay on the table and they show you? It looks like they lay a guy on a hospital table.
He's very smiley for about to have people beamed into him.
Well, yeah, it looks like a James Bond laser on there. It's
Ladies and gentlemen, your probe Bravo 229er is being prepared. I'll be seeing you before you board with some specifics about your mission.
So then after a brief boarding safety video, we see someone who looks remarkably like Dr. Wayne Zielinski take a seat and put his magnifying helmet under the seat in the stowage area.
On this video, they do, so on Star Tours, everybody knows, they'd show the video where Ewoks are coming in, Greedo, everybody's walking onto the spaceship. Well, this one, it's a load of medical professionals with stethoscopes and jackets and stuff. And then there is looks like one girl with a full-on Figment hat following the doctor in there. So it's like a little bit of everybody coming in. And then, of course, Buckles on your left. They show you how to do it.
Doctor, can you confirm or deny whether or not Figment appears any place in the OR or the ER or anywhere in the hospital? Is it?
Only in my office. I have them in my office.
Oh, fair. See, it's still there.
Please begin immediate boarding and have a safe and informative journey.
We meet Dr. Lair, played by Elizabeth Shue from Adventures in Babysitting and the Back to the Future sequels. She has already been shrunk and placed inside a patient, and I guess she's got like FaceTime because she's able to talk to us from inside the body. And she tells us that she's there to study the inflammatory response of the neutrophils as they react to invading bacteria.
It's actually neutrophils, I think. Yeah.
Oh, neutrophils. Thank you.
Yeah. So just a type of white blood cell that particularly targets bacteria.
And I think the mission control guy's like, "Can you tell us that in English?" Something like that. And she says, "I'm here to observe the speed and effectiveness of the white blood cells as they rush to protect the body from infection." And then we're introduced to our pilot, Captain Braddock, who's played by Tim Matheson.
It's Otter. Otter's driving your vehicle.
See, now I know him as being Johnny Quest in the animated Johnny Quest cartoons in the 1970s or late 60s, early 70s that played when I was, a lad. But Brian probably knows him better as Vice President John Hoynes on The West Wing.
Yeah. I mean, in Animal House, I'm more upset that when you were giving Elizabeth Shue's filmography, you skipped Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. Like, she was the love interest, and she was the love interest, and like you just skip that. That's
I never saw the Karate Kid. Like, I'm aware of what it is, but I just have never.
You
seen
have
the movie.
2 Karate Kids in your house. What do you mean you've never seen Karate Kid?
You're telling me that they like never did the crane, they never swept the leg on you?
Sweep the leg. You have a problem with that?
No, Sensei.
No mercy.
They do the crane, and I've heard sweep the leg so many times that I was like,
Wow, you're
I'm like,
missing out. These kids could be waxing your car, working on your deck,
putting a new fence up. I mean,
yeah.
Show me sand floor. Now show me wax on, wax off. Show me paint the fence, up, down. Show me paint the house, side.
I have a job to do
Put
tonight,
it on the
then.
weekend movie list for the Bowers family.
All right, and then we finally move to the miniaturization room, where our body probe Bravo 229er is shot with the particle reducer and beamed to the body at a depth of 200 microns.
Begin initial reduction sequence.
Reduction sequence begun. We're now approaching the miniaturization room, where the technicians will focus a particle beam on our ship.
Particle reducer engaged. Roger.
Entry depth set at 200 microns.
Bravo 229er, begin reduction mode now. 3, 2, 1.
Hold on, everybody. Control, this is Bravo 229er. We're under the skin. Everything looks fine.
Roger.
So 200 microns, how deep are we talking in the skin there?
Still pretty superficial, and I think I sort of alluded to that when we spoke on the phone, that I think maybe that's where some of the scale begins to fall apart too, because some of these cells are 10 microns, so you're stacking cells. It just seems a little bit off to me.
All right, because when we get in there, it looks like this absolutely enormous space, like under the skin of the finger, with this giant wooden shard piercing the top of the room, like where the splinter is.
Well, what number are we looking for, Doctor? What should they have said?
Gosh, it's hard to know, honestly. I would only be guessing, but I mean, I think the bottom line is that Body Wars is to travel through the human body as Star Tours is to travel through space. I mean, they kind of showed you what they thought you wanted to see or what you expected to see. Because I thought the same thing. You've got this what looks like a roof above, and then there's this huge open space, like a big warehouse, and blood vessels coursing through, and a few cells passing by. So it, obviously that you have to be able to see what's in front of you, but it just it doesn't pass the eye test.
Yeah, I know one of the things we talked about too is how remarkably bright it is inside the human body.
Right.
It's like everything's lit somehow. When I guess I would assume there'd be a little bit of light that would probably get through the couple of top layers of skin, but the body would be pitch dark inside.
I figured it'd be more bloody, more of a red hue to everything than, or blue or whatever it is. I don't know.
Were they assuming that they were shining lights from the outside on this splinter, and
they didn't now in inner space they really did that. Actually, they had lighting on the ship that would light it up as it traveled, but they didn't do that in Body Wars. It was
what I'm saying is this almost seems like when the guy's about to get the injection of us, so to speak, there's all these lights on the outside of him. Were they trying to light the inside of the body? like when you put
I see
when you put your hand up to a flashlight, and, it lights up. But that's the impression I got as a kid watching, like, oh, there's there's this external light source. I got a kick out of it. I always thought it was awesome to see this splinter. Like, dude, that's what a splinter looks like, magnified, you know.
Right. I wonder if it does. I wonder if that was even accurate. But
we got to get a microscope. Anybody have one handy, Doctor?
We need
nothing handy. Okay.
We need to find. Actually, somewhere there must be an electron microscope like photograph of a splinter. We'll have to see if we can hunt that down somewhere. So we follow some white blood cells, as we said, to a closer position to Dr. Lair, and she's taking a few more last-minute readings before we get her and pull her into the ship.
There sure is a lot of activity out there. Dr. Lair, we're experiencing some turbulence. I advise you to come aboard immediately.
In a minute, Captain. I need to take one more cell count.
Roger, we're standing by.
And as we swing around to make the final approach, a piece of the splinter breaks off and dislodges and pulls her down deeper into the finger. And
We're gathering a lot of valuable information here. I hope that... Mayday!
Dr. Lair, are you okay?
Mayday! I'm being pulled into a capillary.
Hang on, I'm coming to get you.
I guess my question is, does gravity work that way in a dense fluid? Because I'm assuming we're floating in this fluid, right? So on a microscopic level, could a piece actually just like drop like that?
You wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
She also gets sucked into something, doesn't she?
She does.
She gets into a capillary. Yeah.
Yeah. So like she's hanging on, and then it breaks loose because of the suction.
Possibly, yeah.
Can capillaries do that?
I think there's a lot of fake science in this attraction, but
so that's a no.
I would think not. Yeah.
And you're right, JD. She gets sucked into a capillary. From the capillary, she goes into a vein, and that vein leads into the heart's right ventricle.
I'm being pulled toward the heart!
Braddock, watch your pressure. Your ship could be crushed.
I'm in the right ventricle!
Right behind you!
I'm getting the impression here with the doctor's assistance that Body Wars without the stretch of truth would have been like, well, we're in this black space and we can't see anything and we're not moving. Well, show's over.
Well, some of this information is kind of hard to find. Like when we spoke earlier, we kind of thought, like, how quick would this happen? Getting from the splinter to the heart, and as best I could tell, they estimate that a cell would move about 3 feet per second through the human body. So when I rewatched the video, it does happen pretty quick. So I mean, unlike Fantastic Voyage, where it's sort of like a lazy river ride through the human body, this was somewhat accurate in that she's in the heart fairly quickly.
So see, there's a little something going on there. So while they're in the heart, the ship loses a fuel cell in the turbulence, and your power is reduced by half. And
that can't be good.
Our instruments show you down to half power.
I know, we lost a fuel cell. Gotta get out on the next beat.
You're heading for the lungs, Captain. Air current's extremely hazardous.
There's a little gauge, so on Star Tours, there's that vertical television set where C-3PO is now, where you can kind of see his face as he's talking. Well, that's where Captain Braddock would be, and underneath it there was like a little gauge that would tell you how much power was left in the fuel cell, because they keep updating this to show it going lower and lower as the attraction goes on, to make it seem more scary and critical that you're almost out of power. They really push this idea of like you're running out of juice, because once you run out of power, it's like they can't pull you out anymore. So it's really
well. What's funny about this is that there are scenes in Star Tours where you come out and you're hitting hard, you're hitting gravity, you're bumping into things. This I remember my wife did not want to go on it the first time. She goes, she did Star Tours, she wasn't thrilled about it. She goes, I'm not going to sit there and kind of like float around, because everything was a soft hit or a soft, it was still jarring at times. Especially I think when we go through some point, they flash all the strobes and stuff, the nerves or something. But anyway, when they give you those break or those rest periods between the events, they had this constant motion of loading and oozing through this space that wasn't as, you know what I mean? It was a little sickening.
It was very sloshy. Yes.
Yeah, sloshy. That's a great word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was actually, as we get there, we'll talk about like the worst spot in this and how it was edited, because people were getting sick
They were definitely showing us the inside of their bodies.
Yeah.
Really? We edited. They changed this.
This was actually altered a few months into the attraction's opening. Yep.
Wow.
So let's see. Oh, okay. So we lose the fuel cell, reduced to half power. Dr. Lair is propelled out of the heart and into the lungs, and our body probe follows. And we lose another quarter of its power in the process, so we're down to 25%. And we find Dr. Lair in an air sac being attacked by a white blood cell.
Doctor, I've lost you. Where'd you go?
I'm in an air sac. I need some help here. I'm being attacked by a white blood cell.
Which
I this is a kid. Like it was like he was tugging on her and pulling.
I love right. It's got tentacles, and it's like got two tentacles, and it's reaching up on her.
For a foreign body in the body. I mean,
so how accurate do white blood cells have tentacles? Because in Fantastic Voyage, it's kind of like you're being surrounded in order to get it. Do you know anything about the mechanism of how white blood cells actually work?
Well, I think again a bit of a dramatization there. So a lot of the pictures we see are in vitro pictures that are stained and they're flat. So if you do see electron microscope pictures of white blood cells, I think there is some movement, but we're not talking tentacles, certainly not.
Can you blast it with a space laser? Is that
that was frightening. I watched it again this afternoon, and I'm a little shook still. But the other thing I wanted to mention is at some point we leave the bloodstream, and when we're in the lungs, we're actually floating through air. So they kind of gloss over that. How did we get out of the bloodstream, and now we're suddenly in the we're floating in air.
So answer me this, doctor, then, because if you're breathing in air, there are these little things inside your lungs that capture that air and put them in. Those can't you would have to go through that, or just bust through some capillaries into the lung, right?
Yeah, I guess you obviously air oxygen gets dissolved through a membrane, and alveoli line the bronchioles and things like that. So yeah, it's again, there's a lot that's unexplained here.
I'm getting disappointed now. Like this is just ruining my teenage years.
You just can't think too hard about it.
No, just gotta take it for what it is. Fine.
I think there's like some exhaust fumes from the ship in the lung. That can't be good for anybody.
No.
It's battery. Come on, JT.
It is electric.
It's a Tesla. Yeah.
It's a hover somehow. Okay.
Yep.
So Captain Braddock stuns the white blood cell with the laser.
I see you. I'm gonna use the lasers to try and stun it.
Hurry!
Quick! Into the ship!
I'm in!
And Dr. Lair joins us aboard, and I love this. She lands on kind of the windscreen and like crawls up the window in order to get into a hatch at the top.
Oh, does she?
Yeah.
Like hits the screen like does, like Chewbacca on Star Tours, like now.
Yeah. Or like a bug, and just bloop, and then she kind of climbs up and unfortunately, okay, here's a good little high tension again. The ship has lost too much energy to be beamed out.
Control, I've got Dr. Lair.
Braddock, you've used too much power. You can't beam out.
We need an energy boost.
We're at 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't know why it takes energy for them to beam the ship out. Like maybe there's some kind of locator beacon or something that they have to lock onto in order to. But anyways, we need the energy. Otherwise, we're dead.
Well, let me go back to say Elizabeth Shue jumped right in that cockpit. Nothing on her as far as like goo or blood.
She's not wet at all.
No, she's clean, and I mean instant too. It's like she just popped her helmet off. It was good to go.
Yeah. Well, if you've got Elizabeth Shue, you're not going to cover her with goo.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
You don't do that to a star. Anyways, all right. So she gets the idea to get an energy boost from the brain's electrical impulses.
The brain, it works on electrical impulse.
How do we get there?
Through that capillary.
That's our last ditch thing. We got to make it to the brain and pick up some electricity from the brain in order to recharge the batteries, get enough power, and then be able to get out. So amazingly, she knows exactly where to go. She has been picked up, tossed, thrown around, but somehow she actually has this mental map of the entire like circulatory system in her head and knows exactly where to go. So she says, go through that capillary. So they go through the capillary. They go into the heart's left atrium. Now they've only got 5% power left. So Captain Braddock has no choice but to use the force of the beating heart to propel the ship forward to the brain.
Okay, we're in the heart's left atrium.
Braddock, your power is decreased to 5%. 5%.
I'm gonna use the heartbeat to propel us.
So we slosh around for a moment, like waiting for everything to like, come perfect. And then we're pushed out of the heart. She tells him to make a hard right into the cerebral artery, and then we arrive above the brain in the spinal fluid.
Okay, we're in the cerebral artery. It's taking us to the brain. We're just above the brain in the spinal fluid.
And this section of going through the heart the second time is where people used to puke. So that sloshing around, waiting for the heartbeat to propel you out, that there was one particular move that people have described where the ship was, I guess, tilted. The front left side was tilted up, and so it would be the rear right-hand corner is back, the front left-hand side is up, and then the whole thing tilted forward so that the left front was then pointed down and the right rear was up.
Oh, so it almost twisted as it went.
That was the move that would cause people to puke.
Wow.
And so a few months in, they completely edited out the second trip into the heart, and you went from the lungs like straight into the bloodstream and up to the brain. And I guess I'm sure it took a while because you go through all of the bother to reprogram that. So they had to put in this weird kind of poorly done transition because I can't go refilm it all again.
Right.
So they had to do this weird crossfade in order to hide that change, because the way the ride was done, much like Star Tours, it attempted to make it look like one continuous shot as much as possible. So that was the part that they changed. So we're up in the brain, we're around the spinal fluid, we've got 2% power left, and we have to very dramatically cross the blood-brain barrier.
Okay, we're in the heart's left atrium.
Braddock, your power is decreased to 5%. 5%.
I'm gonna use the heartbeat to propel us.
And so I'm gonna ask, what is the blood-brain barrier?
Well, the blood-brain barrier is basically just like a specialized lining of cells that sort of protects the brain from infection. So certainly there are things that need to get through. So there's transporters within these cells that can get glucose through and things like that. But remarkably, the brain is safe from lots of things that float in the blood that could cause it harm, whether it be infection or large cells or medicines and things like that. So it's you have to be a certain size to be able to pass through the blood-brain barrier, basically.
All right.
I'm feeling better about that splinter I got last week, that it's not going into my head.
And so we get through the blood-brain barrier, we get into the cerebral cortex, and then we kind of ease up next to a neuron. And you see like all these neurons hanging down and sort of electricity sparking around. And he releases the fuel cell shield in hopes that it'll act like a lightning rod. And we're just sitting there waiting, hoping that the synapse that we're next to fires.
The cerebral cortex, we're inside the brain.
I'm gonna deploy the fuel cell shield and hope it works like a lightning rod.
Braddock, your power is gone. We can't get you out. Repeat, your power is gone.
This neuron better fire.
And I found out that they actually they've measured like what the electrical charge is, and it's 1/10 of a volt is what a synapse like actually puts out. So I am assuming there must be some sort of electrical math going on when you're shrunk down. It's more powerful than you're like, I don't know if it runs off of 120 or what, but And I think the other question would probably be amperage, and voltage. So I don't know if one's measured the amperage, but somehow that gives the ship enough electricity, and then we're beamed out of the body. And and I found out that in the synapses, I guess the tunnels and the pores they're like the synapses are less than 100 nanometers from each other, so it's a pretty densely packed, I guess, area of the brain.
Come on, hit the shield. Hit the shield.
You have power! We did it! We're beaming you out!
We're rescued. Mission Control tells us that we've broke every rule of the book, but we also pulled off the most spectacular mission the place has ever seen, and we were the first to travel through the heart, lungs, and brain.
Do you realize what we just did?
I'll tell you what you did. You broke every regulation in the book.
Control, we were the first to go through the heart, lungs, and brain.
You also managed to pull off the most spectacular mission this place has ever seen. Congratulations.
Thank you, Control.
An observation is somebody who had been on Star Tours as a kid. I got excited about this. I knew it was the same simulator technology. I remember coming off of this and kind of being like bummed out. Like Star Tours just had more oomph to it. I still would always go on the ride, don't get me wrong. And I don't know, it was I think it was really neat for them to use a technology like that again. And we've never seen it. It's surprising Star Tours is still going. This is gone. But it's surprising that technology, it's not exciting anymore because the screen is so small. If you put that technology, kind of like what the Simpsons and Back to the Future ride used to be in Universal, where you've got that in a big screen, it could be really different. But I think they're also, they induce the body to do things it shouldn't be doing too. Seem to be very careful. I don't know. I it's just my own personal recollection of it going on and being like, yeah, I'll still go do it again. But I didn't feel like I white knuckled myself as much as I did on Star Tours at the time.
Yeah. You know what else is interesting is I remember when they opened Body Wars and Star Tours was under construction, there was always this rumor that Met had insisted in the contract that that Wonders of Life and Body Wars had to be open for a year before Star Tours could open. So that way people would want to go on Body Wars and wouldn't want to go on, because really as kids, we wanted Star Tours. It's like we were aware of it at Disneyland. That was a big deal to
and it's Star Wars, right?
Right.
And the title too, Body Wars. Where the heck does that come from? Is it trying to get, there was no war. That's the thing, is there was no fight. Or was it I don't know.
Well, you're kind of, so that as we said the last time, that name actually, the head of Met came up with that.
Yeah.
I think they were just looking for something, short and sweet that at least made it sound thrilling, rather than the incredible journey within.
All right, Doctor, but tell me, do you think it would have been more exciting to fight some, evil virus coming in and having lasers on the ship and being able to take him out?
I think they did a fairly good job of showing multiple settings, making it, because like you said, it could have just been going through one artery the whole trip and dark and lots of red blood cells obscuring your view. So we got to see the lungs, we got to see the brains. I think at this point there wasn't it wasn't really well known that there was your body was run on electricity. So I think I think that was kind of a new concept for a lot of people.
Looking it up, so Body Wars opened on October 19th, 1989. Star Tours allegedly opened on December 15th, 1989. So that was only a couple of months between them, not nearly a year at all. So so it appears like that rumor of the 1-year contract would have been completely false. It was good, right? It's fun.
No, I still enjoy it. Absolutely.
Yeah. It was no Star Tours, but who didn't want to blow up the Death Star? Everybody wanted to be on the trench run. Legitimately, when Captain Rex says, "I've always wanted to do this," that is exactly what everybody
what you're thinking
was thinking on that ride. So
Yep. No, 100%.
So a couple other quick fun facts. So one of the miniaturization technicians was actually played by Leonard Nimoy's cousin, Jeff Nimoy, in the pre-show. Jeff had just moved to Los Angeles after graduating from NYU in their acting school, and he met Leonard at a party that I guess his aunt had put together. And Leonard said promised Jeff that he would cast him in some role in his next film so that way he could get his SAG card. And it just so happened that Body Wars was the next thing that he directed. And so Jeff Nimoy got his SAG card because he ran into his cousin like at a party.
Look at that.
You had a question about the actual footage of Body Wars.
CGI.
So that was done at Industrial Light and Magic. It was directed by Dave Carson, who I believe also did Star Tours. And I believe that so he storyboarded it, and then they produced a low resolution animatic using whatever 3D graphics technology they had at the time. And I think they did that supposedly so they could hand that off to Imagineers so they could begin programming the simulator while the final visual effects were being filmed, so they could get kind of a head start on doing the programming. Again, they got chosen to do this because they won an Academy Award for Inner Space. So it was, I mean, not only had they done Star Wars, but it was proven, oh, hey, we know how to do inside of the human body because we just did this 2 years ago and won an award for it. One difference, though, Inner Space was done all practically. So, they built big sets, and when they did their blood cells, they actually filled up tubes with water and had little tiny blood cells and pushed them through so that way they could film that. And then I think they composited the ships in later so you could have that movement, but it was real things whizzing by the camera. When they did Body Wars, they actually used what was then kind of a novel idea, and they did 3D graphics for the white blood cells. So it was a combination of practical sets, 3D graphics, and then miniatures for the body probes. Well, I guess you never see the body probe because you're in the body probe, but there are a couple of shots of the body probe as they're prepping it and getting it ready. So when they did the interiors of the body, the crew created the largest motion controlled sets that the company had ever produced at that time. So they built these things at an enormous scale, 40 feet wide, and then had motion control cameras going through them in order to make those moves that the body probe did. And as we've talked about, the motion control cameras are all computer controlled, so that way you can do multiple passes with different lighting and get the same exact shots over and over again. So that way you can composite together all this stuff. When I look at the footage, I'm really curious. One thing I don't know for sure, to me, it looks almost as if some of the stuff is digitally composited rather than optically composited. There's a certain, I don't know, junkiness to the compositing that is not typical of ILM at the time.
Yeah.
It looks a lot, I don't know, it looks like video to me for some reason. I don't know if that's just indicative of now that we've seen versions out on YouTube. But there's something different about the motion that doesn't register to me like a movie. I don't know what frames per second the film was shot at. I know a lot of times at Epcot, it's they shot things faster than 24 frames per second. So maybe it's just a higher frame rate, which made it look weird to me. But it does not look as good as Star Tours looks when I watch it back. And so I don't know if anybody has any of those details, please let us know. So that's Body Wars.
Before we move on, we should probably mention about the motion simulator ride being probably the thing Michael Eisner got most excited about incorporating into the parks, which is why you got it at Star Tours in '87 in Disneyland, and then both of them opening in Florida in 1989. There's a couple of different books and articles written about it, but he went gaga when he first saw this technology. And I'm going to throw my own little memory from the late 80s on the boardwalk in Ocean City, New Jersey. Playland had what I came to learn because of a Theme Park University article is called the Magic Motion Theater. And they really were mini Body Wars and Star Tours ride vehicles that were made available to malls and theme parks and all. Well, you'd actually put coins in them, and then the ride, like a ride attendant would open the doors, and they'd load, I don't know, maybe 8 people in or 6 people in, and they'd run a film of the space shuttle taking off, or of one was a ride at, I forget if a roller coaster at Carowinds or Kings Island, and I always used to get the roller coaster one. But it was the same experience as, the screen's in front of you and you get into this enclosed vehicle, and it felt like you were riding on the roller coaster, which in, the 1980s blew young teenager me away. And they were apparently all over the country. So I wonder if other people had that experience and remember riding them where they were.
Yeah, I can remember some really crude ones, like when I was little, and I can't remember if it predates it, but I remember there was this one rocket thing, maybe at a county fair, that was like a cylinder that you would walk in the back and sit down, and it would raise up on a hydraulic arm pushing it up, and then it could kind of just tilt left and right, and they had some sort of space thing that they projected in front of you.
Yeah.
Not as sophisticated as the ones where you could do the tilt and the yaw and the pitch and all of the 6 degrees of freedom.
Right.
But yeah, that was kind of a big deal to be able to do those simulated things, and it's certainly better than the Predator. I remember Magic World in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. There was this UFO attraction where you would just sit down, you'd walk into a UFO, and then they just had it on the screen in front of you. There was no motion like in the seats. They just projected you like flying over stuff, and there were many shots where you could actually see the shadow of the helicopter that it was being filmed from, like on the ground in front of you. But Star Tours, that was a very sophisticated technology for the time. Absolutely. And it's still fun. It's still a lot of fun today, even
still works,
so many years later. Yep.
It's crazy to think that this was, the headliner for Epcot for a long time. I mean, it was on all the park maps, and I know that was the ride we went to first.
Oh my gosh. And all the TV stuff, when you would watch and get inside of the room and like watch stuff Body Wars is pitched. Even I know we have a commercial on our from, I think, whatever year that was, 89 or 90, that they ran during the I think after Maelstrom opened on that special. There's like, and Body Wars, and that was one of the big headlining. That was absolutely like the headlining attraction of Epcot when that opened. That was the big deal. And we talked before about like Eisner tapping his son as a teenager and like trying to get teens more excited about, especially teen boys, excited about stuff at Disney, because at the time there was kind of perception that it was for girls and younger girls. So giving teens something to be excited about there was a really big deal. So let's shift a little, and let's talking about another movie with a non-moving theater called The Making of Me. And
I think if it was a moving theater, it'd be very interesting.
So there was an issue of Eisner's that's published just before the attraction opened, and they said that the film would be called It's Our Baby. And it was described as an emotion-filled motion picture telling the story of a young married couple and the development and birth of their child. And I don't think that's actually what we got. I mean, it's kind of along those lines. But really, what I guess kind of happened was Michael Eisner had watched this episode of the television show Nova on PBS called The Miracle of Life. And we know it was originally aired on February 15th, 1983. It probably reran again, but he was just crazy about this footage that was shot by a Swedish photographer cinematographer named Lennart Nielsen. He did this incredible in utero photography of developing fetuses. I mean, again, I don't know how you light this, but like this photography that he did was gorgeous, and they built this PBS special around it. You know, I think he shot like 5 or 6 minutes worth of different times, and it was really the first time that people had seen, you know, what a developing fetus looked like. And so Eisner's idea is like, we got to get that footage, let's use that, but then let's wrap a story around it, so that way there's more of a human element that's attached to it, so we can show people this great stuff, but we can also make it entertaining. And apparently he had assigned some other directors and writers to this, and much like, you know, Jerry Reese coming in taking over Cranium Command, the people that he had tried to do this like just weren't working out. Like whatever they were doing was not blending and being entertaining enough. And so he finally turned this attraction into what ended up being a reunion for the crew of Moonlighting, ABC show with Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd. The entirety of the crew from that show ended up working on this movie. So it was written and directed by Glenn Gordon Caron, who was the creator of Moonlighting, produced by Jane Daniel, used the same art director, James J. Agassiz, same film editor, Philip Carr Neal, and the same construction coordinator on the sets, John Kersey. And what I think I've been able to figure out is that Moonlighting in its last season was kind of in trouble. And so the last episode of Moonlight, I mean, first of all, Bruce Willis had turned into a giant star. So like he was not really interested in perpetuating the show anymore. And I guess he and Sybil Shepherd were like actually fighting in real life. They hated each other. And so the show, after 4 seasons, was coming to a conclusion. So the last episode of Moonlighting aired on May 14th, 1989. Wonders of Life opened on October 19th. But The Making of Me didn't open until October 30th. And I think there was a quote in the Disney news that like it was finished virtually at the last possible instant. So it was basically done in about 4 months. So I think what happened is Moonlighting must have wound down, and who knows, Michael Eisner had his way with the ABC people, and he might have said like, hey, we need this thing done. You guys just wrapped Moonlighting. It's like, let's just take your crew and have you do this movie over here. And, you know, Moonlighting was a hit show, so it would make sense to like get the people that had worked on that to work on this, because it was really good. But I found potentially another connection. So there was an episode of the show that was shot and aired on December 6, 1988 called A Womb with a View. And it was about an angel having a conversation with the in utero baby conceived by the show's lead characters, David Addison and Maddie Hayes. There's all kinds of sort of similarities, not only with that, but also with things that would end up in the one Jerry did, Cranium Command, because there's so like Bruce Willis is in kind of just like this big black set, like in a giant bed, and then at some point there's like giant hamburgers as the characters are eating, like a giant hamburger comes down past him, like real built giant. And so I think if you watched that episode and you're looking for somebody that could work with this, you would probably say like, oh yeah, that guy, they can totally do that. We've done this already. I think we can make this happen. So let's start talking about the movie. You did even more research than I did, Bill, on this. So we'll kind of shoot back and forth, but jump in here as we talk about this, because we sat down and we watched it independently, and then when we got together to chat about it, it's like we noticed a lot of the same things, and there's some really kind of funny stuff in there. So first, Martin Short plays his own dad. Like, you see Martin Short, and he's like, I think it starts off with him being born like in a hospital in the 1940s, and then he kind of describes like, oh, how did I get here, and all this stuff. They end up kind of going back in time, and he starts to talk about how his parents got together.
That's my dad. Or will be. Everyone's pretty excited. I know I am. Of course, no one sees me. I'm a long way from happy. Long way. In fact, my mother hasn't even been born yet.
And the first thing they do is a sequence where the mom and dad are at a college dance in 1947. And my God, if this isn't ripped out of Back to the Future, I don't know what is. It is so reminiscent of when Marty's parents meet at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, because they're there with separate dates, and then they see each other, across the room, and fall in love. Is that?
Yeah. It was pretty much note for note, Back to the Future.
Yeah. So I guess if it works, don't break it. And then Martin Short, they get married. The parents get married. Martin Short looks at the audience and he says,
okay, mom and dad have met, mom and dad have married, and now mom and dad want to have a baby. Huh? Wait a second.
And the parents actually turn and acknowledge the camera, break the fourth wall, and say no. And then they go on and do all of these things, that a young married couple might do. Like, they water ski, they enter a dance competition, and all this time Martin Short is on screen saying, and now you're going to do it, and they're like, no, and then they go on to the next thing. So there's this really funny back and forth.
You mean you'd rather do this than have me? They'd rather do this than have me?
The parents finally get down to business, and then the camera kind of pans up through the roof, and then Martin Short begins to deliver his talk.
You're probably wondering what I'm doing up here instead of down there. Remember the sperm we said my dad had and the egg we said my mom had? Well, getting the sperm and the egg together is one of the great miracles of life. It's also one of those things that people like to do in private. I mean, most people don't even like to talk about it. It makes them nervous. Some people laugh, others tell jokes. Lots of people just avoid the subject altogether. But the truth is, when two people are in love, one of the loveliest things they can do is be as close together as possible. They might kiss, they might hug. Another way that mature adults express their love for each other is to get so close that the man's sperm actually enters the woman's body. How this happens is truly one of the great, grand secrets we share as human beings. In fact, the first time it's explained to us, it always seems incredible or unbelievable. But believe it or not, all of us, everyone who's ever been born, came into being because their parents made love, allowing the sperm and the egg to meet. Everyone, that is, except me. I mean, I haven't been born yet. Have I?
It's interesting. They skirt around a lot of the terminology that's used. And they say, baby making parts as opposed to any kind of anatomic feature. So it's definitely the Disney version of the birds and the bees for sure.
Yeah.
It's almost too sanitized where you don't even know what's going on if you don't get it to begin with.
He does this, he talks about it's so vague. He's like, when two people love each other, they get close, and so very close that that
things happen.
That this thing happens. somehow it's proximity that is the obviously, especially at that time with the audience and it being Disney, it's like they weren't comfortable getting into the mechanics of it, and you never know how how much your audience has told the kids about the birds and the bees and whether they want to do that. So yeah, they were very I don't know, very very vague about it. Then they cut to an animated segment which was actually done, I think, by Croyer Animation.
What's going on? Haven't you heard? It's the big race. First one to find the egg gets to make a baby. And the rest of us?
And what's interesting is that there's quite a few people that end up being very important to Disney and Pixar who worked on this. So Ralph Eggleston animated it. He ended up being a really key art director and especially for color for Pixar. So he worked on Toy Story doing storyboards, and then he ended up doing color mood boards for tons and tons of their movies. Toady Fusely was an animator. He did a bunch of work for Brad Bird on Iron Giant, and then later on in The Incredibles. Bill Croyer and Susan Croyer, who owned Croyer Animation, they worked on it. So they outsourced that one segment to them. But much like Pete Doctor working on the animation for Cranium Command for that pre-show, it's there were a bunch of people that worked on this, even though it was a third-party company that ended up being huge and important in the industry. So it kind of has a 1950s feel to it. So the sperm going to the fallopian tube up and left, and it's just this real funny kind of 1950s thing where the sperm are racing each other, and there's the egg on its couch waiting for them, and there's a finish line banner. A bunch of the sperm get diverted and go the wrong way, and then a few of them are trying to get there, but they, instead of breaking through the banner, it's they hit the banner and bounce off of it. The egg is making a big kissy face, waiting excitedly for the sperm to show up, and then
that's exactly how I envisioned all this.
Right. And when it does, there's a big cartoon explosion. And yeah, so it's just really, really silly. And then I think while she's pregnant, they kind of casually drop in this message about how smoking affects unborn babies. They're watching a movie. The parents are watching a movie in the movie theater while she's pregnant, and someone sits down and starts smoking next to them, and they get up and leave, which I thought was an interesting little, because at the time, I don't know if people even considered, the hazards of smoking and pregnancy. So this would have been in probably, well, we know exactly when it is because the poster on the theater was what?
20,000 Leagues.
Yeah.
So 54?
Yeah. So hard set at that time.
Wait a second. What's that? Smoke? My mom wouldn't smoke while she was pregnant with me. Would she? She's got to know smoking, drinking, taking drugs. Those are all bad for little sprites like me.
So eventually he's born. They actually did kind of very cleverly use real birth footage in this sequence, which I think was kind of another undone thing at that point. Because usually when you see babies born on television, they're 5-6 months old, and they throw a little goop on them, but they're mostly clean. And I remember seeing this movie, trying to remember what age I would have been, 17, 18 or something, and the baby comes out and it's blue, and you're like, what is that? Because you've never seen anything depicted like that realistically before.
We were watching some show recently. Oh, what was it? Yeah, and they had the baby in the sitcom, and just like you said, that baby's 9 months old,
It's got hair. It's smoking a cigar.
Right. And it was different babies in every shot. It was so bad. I can't remember what show it was, but
yeah,
it was pretty funny.
But it was, and I think we were trying to figure out the baby is born with natural childbirth, and I think we're trying to determine when that actually became popular, because at some point they used to just knock out the moms completely. Like the dad would go into the waiting room, and he would wait, for the baby to be born,
He'd be
and then he would
pacing
go
with his box of cigars and waiting.
cigars. Exactly. And but they depict this with like the dad in the room with them in 1955, which probably doesn't sound
Certainly
like
not
accurate
typical,
for that.
no.
Yeah, for that time period.
Or if you were my dad and the Flyers were playing game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, he would make my mother wait until the end of the second period to take her to the hospital when she had gone into labor, because he didn't want to miss any of the game.
And so he's born, and then there's a change. Then there's a girl addressing the camera, and I think it's supposed to be Martin Short's like future wife was also in the maternity ward era, at the same time, like as a baby, and setting up that they would meet eventually, and then he would start a family of his own.
It happens to everyone. One day you're walking down the street and you think to yourself, where did I come from? How did I get here? What's it like being born?
But it was a, about 8-9 minute film, like very cute, but really the star of the show was this in utero footage, and the whole thing was built around that. So I'm sure for people it was kind of jaw dropping. I know it was for me at the time.
I have to say, I remember my mother had a book in the 70s and 80s somewhere that had that photography on the cover.
Oh, okay.
A very famous picture of the hand and the fetus and the face. Oh my gosh. I'm really wondering if it's the same thing. It was really amazing footage.
It still looks great today. I managed to see some of it on YouTube. I think the Nova show is and it still looks fantastic.
Yeah.
The Walt Disney World Company thanks you for joining us for the Making of Me. Please gather your personal belongings and take small children by the hand and stand and turn to your left and exit to your left only through the doors at the rear of the theater. Again, that's exit to your left only. And for your safety, please do not cross over the purple benches. Thank you and have a wonderful day at Epcot. Goodbye, everybody.
Disney had a lot of concerns about the depiction of human life before birth during that time, because in '89, the abortion debate was simmering just exactly like it is today. And there's many quotes in newspaper articles at the time with Barry Braverman, and he says, I think it'll elicit some controversy, but our intent is not to walk into the teeth of that issue. So a lot of even newspaper reporters were bringing up to them, like, how are you going to suss this with the debate about abortion? He's like, I think we will be okay. Because as of now, there was, debates even then about when does life start, what's appropriate. And they were trying to avoid getting protested about, since that was a huge issue for Disney even back then, when they started to give, health benefits to like partners back then, which Eisner said was the right thing to do. So Disney was trying to avoid controversy as much as possible, but it ended up being, a very, when I'm going back and watching this on YouTube, it's like the parts that were funny really hit with the crowd. It's like you can really hear the crowd laugh at the dialogue. It was very enjoyable. I think it did a great job showing, showing this beautiful photography, and just kind of really set the stage for showing what really is like one of the coolest experiences that you can have, as a parent, is like watching, your child being born. It is, I think, the most profound experience that I've certainly ever had. Todd, JT, what you went through this too. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong or if you feel differently, but it's one of those things that I don't think you can ever forget.
No, you can't. And it's, I think it's hard if you're not a parent to appreciate it, but also more so how hard it is to convey that emotion and that life event in a film, in a theme park, in a theater with screaming kids and other things going on. So it takes a talented filmmaker to do that. And even then it's very, very.
I expected so much more in childbirth. I always tell people, it was just like it happened so fast, and you're like, wait, that was it? Like I expected, some robot to come in and help, and all sorts of crazy medical stuff to go on, and like literally they just folded this sweet bright light out of the ceiling. I go, that's what it is. That's it. Like it wasn't. I don't know. You expected way more drama, I guess, than after you saw it in movies and all that stuff. So they, I always tell everybody at work though. I always say, hey, if you're pregnant and you're, something happens, I want to drive you, because to me that's the most free pass to speed. I got I'm ready.
My wife's water broke, and she's in the bath. She goes, all right, well, the water broke. Are the shrimp done yet? I'm like, no. She's like, let's eat them first, because I'm not going to be eating well for a few days. So we finished the shrimp, had dinner. Then we went to the hospital. We knew we had some time.
Yeah, you always think that it's going to happen right away, and it's a process. I still get yelled at because I was taking a nap on the couch. I'm like, well, we had like 12 hours to wait. I go, I got to get ready. I got to, build up that sleep time. But
That's right.
Dr. Bill, do you have any thoughts to kind of wrap up our trip through the wonders of life here?
JT asked on the previous episode, he wondered if it inspired anybody to become a doctor. I think Wonders of Life was a fun and humorous pavilion. I didn't find it quite as inspiring as the other Future World attractions, I guess. It didn't inspire me necessarily, but I found it to be you've also mentioned how it was just kind of the perfect microcosm of the 90s. It was so much different than anything else that was in Epcot at the time.
All right. So
I have to agree with you there too. The inspiration you got from it was very, very different. I think I was more inspired by walking under the arch and up the winding pathway and going into the dome and going, oh wow, that's really cool. And then I don't know. We're going to talk about Buzzy. He inspired me a little bit, I suppose. That was fun, but that's for another time.
I think the overall of it to me was like, it got you thinking about that stuff. That was it for me as a kid. You being active and doing things, and then you got into the human body and all that. I mean, not that that's like inspiring, if you're an active or not active person, but it was something that was it was different for the time, and that kind of fit the Epcot mold, in my opinion. It was different. It wasn't a dark ride. It was weird.
Yeah, and there's such breadth to the topics that they were trying to cover. It's with some things, pavilions like, oh, it's space. Okay, great. There's some space stuff, but like there are so many different facets to health and wellness, and pregnancy and birth, and mental health, and there's obviously a lot of ground to try to cover with one pavilion. So I think it was hard to be laser focused on one thing or another as much as some other stuff was, like communication. All right, well, there's kind of a linear story to communication. We start here and we end here. With health and in human development, there's so many ways that you can go and so many things that you can show. You're really just kind of giving people a taste of many different things, and then it would be up to them to pursue whatever that they were interested in particular to go forward.
What's comical though, can you even imagine Disney doing something like this now? I don't think it would ever happen. Nothing similar at all.
Not in today. I mean, look, we're living in a world where people don't even want to teach certain things. That may not be one that what they want to teach.
I just imagine a pavilion that had, there was no movie connect. Well, Goofy was in there, I guess, but it's just different. I mean, they have Wide World of Sports Pavilion, but that's not really anything related like this, where you're teaching anything. There's just nothing like this, and I don't think there ever will be.
Yeah, I suspect you could squeeze an Inside Out reference in there.
With that.
Yeah, that could be something. I'm trying to think of any other.
Is that more over at imagination? You don't know,
Well, no, because again, that film, as lovely it is like one of the most saddest experiences I ever had, because you're watching this 14-year-old. I can't remember
it's
how
a horrible movie. I hated it.
Her struggling with with her mental health at the time, just like I felt I mean, it's a movie that I thoroughly enjoyed that I absolutely never want to see again as long as I live.
Yeah.
Because it was just, I was an emotional wreck through the entire thing. But as I mean, you could certainly use the, the joy and all those, like, again, in a very similar show to Cranium Command, is like you could go back and redo that and talk about mental health in a new way using those same characters, and that would be absolutely fine, and I'm sure they would figure out some way to make it fun.
I'm always amazed they have I mean, they get like 100,000 runners for marathon weekend, and that's great and that's fine, but like they never really do any form of tie-in with that. Not saying they would have to, but I mean, there's a lot of people that do that sort of stuff, and there's just, it's like one weekend every 3-4 months, and that's it. There's nothing in the parks actually ever tied in.
Right. Well, and there's certainly a captive audience of sports enthusiasts who would be very interested potentially in learning more about how to unlock their body's potential.
By the same token, there is a constituency out there that rejects the traditional health messages, as you saw when they had, what was the one in Communicore that they put out there was called Health Habit Warriors, or
Habit Heroes.
Habit Heroes, and then we're like, oh, you're shaming fat people, and
that's changed now.
So like there's a whole different, and there's nothing in Wonders of Life that was not scientifically accurate in terms of the information it was attempting to convey. But there's just a constituency out there that thinks, I mean, I'm talking as a fat guy, that there's a constituency out there that like raises their flag, like I have a right to be out of shape. Well, I don't think anybody's questioning your right to be out of shape, but it doesn't change the science of the best things for you are X, Y, and Z in terms of diet and exercise. And
it's, you almost think Disney's they're not gonna touch it with a 10-foot pole nowadays.
Not anymore. It's,
and they didn't even do Habit Heroes, really. Wasn't that like an outside company and a big tie-in? And like, I mean, it was their park and their thing, but that was interesting how that didn't hit.
Yeah, I think that was sponsor driven. I don't remember who was it, Humana or?
Yeah, I think it was one of the insurance companies that that sponsored it. And again, I mean, it was fairly uncontroversial, but
it made headlines for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's just easier to make a Moana's Wonderful World of Water or whatever they're doing, and avoid the noise.
Nobody's got a problem with water.
I was gonna say no, yeah.
That's because you've never asked the Wicked Witch of the West constituency. I bet they're not thrilled about the water attraction.
They're going to steer clear of that.
Or the Mogwai constituency. I mean,
well, Hal, I appreciate you taking us through the wonders of life and through. I know we're not done. We have more. And Dr. Bill, thank you very much for sitting in and your insight. I believe you are the first person to say dermis on this show, which is great, and give us a, and Hal might be the first to say nanometer. So we're definitely breaking new grounds here. But as always, Hal, you came up with some T-shirts regarding Wonders of Life that were posted to our web shop the other day.
Yes, we have. I'm really trying to work hard to do some Wonders of Life stuff because I know it has a lot of fond memories for people. So I'm trying to think. I started with, I think I'll do 3, and then I ended up doing 5. So
you did 5, yes, you did.
So we've got general knowledge.
Yep.
Saying, what do you think this is, Disney World? And then
you have the Legion of the Left Lobe.
That's right. There was, so in the pre-show there was medals that were hanging on the wall, and so I've taken reproduced that medal and made it sort of like the pocket size, as if you were actually wearing the medal that you belong to the Legion of Left Lobe. So that's available. Also the garbage can. The garbage cans outside Wonders of Life had this very interesting
90s. So
yeah,
90s.
very 90s. Like just a color field with like triangles and squares and circles of different colors overlapping each other. It's okay as a t-shirt. Really, where I think it shines is as a phone case.
I just was about to say that's a cool phone case, a pretty cool coffee mug.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
pillow too. That's a nice looking pillow.
and then Pure and Simple limit. I'm sorry, not Pure and I'm going to do a Pure and Simple. I haven't done Pure and Simple yet. Well and Goods Limited, the store there. It's like I've remixed their logo and turned that into a super 90s looking design to celebrate that. And then that's 4.
You did the X-Ray Goofy.
X-Ray Goofy.
Oh, that's right. The X-Ray Goofy from in front of Goofy About Health.
Which is great too. That's a wonderful looking one.
So a lot more to come. I'm working on reproducing some of the early cast member shirts that they wore. So that's going to be the next one.
Awesome.
And then also the tracksuit that was available for sale. The logo that was on that one. So
could you just get one with a splinter on it? Is that okay? Can we get that?
Yeah.
Magnified splinter.
We should just sell a giant, our next Christmas ornament could maybe be like a giant splinter with like a little tiny Dr. Lair on it.
Exactly.
A photo op, Retro Magic, just a big old prop. Like
yeah, we'll bring Elizabeth's shoe. She can sit next to it. They got the swan, they got the splinter. Well, Hal, thank you very much for your artwork. But so thank you to all of our listeners as always. We are, as we said at the top, we probably got more Wonders of Life to do. We actually have another episode already recorded. It's an interview. We've got to talk about everybody's favorite Cranium Command, and that's how we will wrap this up. I'm not sure if we're going there next month. The holiday season is coming up. Brian has been pouring through. I gave him a list of about, I don't know what we have, Brian, but 30 different holiday specials dating back to the 80s that we recently acquired, which is
going to
amazing.
revisit some of the holiday specials and some holiday activities at the parks and resorts, and it's going to be a merry and bright time for all.
There we go. So we'll be getting that out to you as you pick up and listen to this one. That holiday special episode should be coming out mid-December sometime. So that's our plan.
We should do a holiday movie night.
Well, we could with all these. I mean, we could just sit there and turn the projector on, let it run for 12 hours if you want. We can go to bed, but all night affair there.
As I try to meter out the workload for our crew here, JT, I had the same idea that at some point in December. Or late November, we need to do a movie night that is themed, because it gives me an opportunity to go and do about 30 minutes of holiday-related commercials for our pre-roll, which is a big fun thing for me, and we do have a metric ton of holiday stuff to share, so should be a lot of fun.
It should. So, all right. Well. And Dr. Bill, thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate you joining. I thank you for your donation and obviously sitting in on this. We really appreciate it. I hope it was fun for you. And, hopefully you'll get out of there at the hospital without people say, Doctor, can you come over here real quick? So he's still secluded here in the secret office.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. We super appriate it. And
if anybody stops you, just say I'm being sucked into a capillary. That's
good.
Oh,
good luck.
Man. Exactly. I don't know how. Maybe we could make some light green T-shirts with Dr. Bill's logo on there, right? And we're gonna walk around like a doctor, like put the mask on. So. All right. Well, as always, thank you to our listeners. If you can give us a shout out on iTunes or whatever your favorite podcast app is. And actually some big news on that. Just tonight, JT has set us up on Amazon Music. So another location you can find us. And we can say, Alexa, play the Retro Disney World podcast.
Oh, I got to try that now.
Hopefully I just set off a lot of Alexas around there, around the world. But again, thanks very much for listening. We'll be back with episode 80 next month. And with that, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Cougar on Twitter at LS1JT, and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.
Folks, you can unlatch your safety belt by pushing the button on your left. Please exit the ship to your right. Don't forget your personal belongings. Oh, and welcome home.